In this video, I'm going to show you how I'm buying a company and what makes me want to do that rather than just go out and bootstrap something. This one question took me years to answer is what business was I really in? Because when I first started, I didn't really care. I was just in business and I was doing something because it was what the service that I could provide. And the service that I was providing was marketing. But even when I started that, the whole reason that I got into business was because like, hey, I want to have a very large impact on the world. And the best way to have an impact on the world is to have more energy, stored energy. Capital, money is a form of that stored energy. And so when I got down to it, I said, the business that I'm really in is actually scaling. That's what I really love doing. I understand business. I love the back end of business. Business to me is just numbers on a spreadsheet. And it really is. So let's go through and figure out what are the different stages inside of a startup cycle or inside of a company cycle, and where we're looking for our acquisition and why we're looking there. And so the reason that I'm not bootstrapping is for many reasons. First off, there's not one thing that I'm really passionate about. So like I'll give you an example. If I was an e-com guy and I was really passionate about a specific product, so let's just say that you're selling phone cases. I'm not really excited about phone cases, nor am I excited about getting phone cases in the hands of more people. Part of the reason is that just is not interesting to me. I don't think that that's a very interesting prospect. The other thing would be, let's say that I love engineering. I would go out and engineer a new product and bring that to the world. So something like there are tons of companies out there that are doing a lot of work in tech. Tesla, for example, they are building autonomous vehicles and robots and AI. That's very interesting, but my expertise is not in that. My expertise is in business and scaling. Those are the things that I know like at best, and that's what I can see myself suffering for a very long time doing. But I didn't know anyone. And actually, there is a way to just go out and network a bunch and meet people who are these types of nerds who have built something really cool and partner with them and say, hey, you have an amazing product. You're an engineer. I want to help you build a business around this really cool thing. Palmer Luckey is a great example of that. He was very good. It was the founder of Oculus. He ended up selling to Facebook for in the billions. And he built a very interesting device. It was a VR headset. And he had the both business knowledge as well as the tech knowledge, but he was more so on the tech side. And when he started filling people around him that were more on the business side, he was able to scale and grow what he was doing at Oculus. And that's what eventually led to the partnership and then eventually acquisition from Meta, Facebook at the time. So that's why during this development time of a company, you are going to be probably miserable. You're going to be miserable for years because you are grinding, having to figure out something. Setting up a company can take a very long time and is very difficult, especially to do right. And the business that I had set up initially was not built to scale to billions of dollars, which is the goal. That's the whole point of doing this. It's a zero-sum game. So the reason that I didn't want to, I set up the business that scaled really fast and was able to scale other companies really fast, but it wasn't built. And an example of this is if you have blocks and all these blocks are building a tower, that tower is only going to be so big. If you have, let's just say 30 seconds to build the fastest tower, you might stack those blocks like this and just get it as high as you can, but it's not going to be very stable. Whereas if you have 10 minutes to set up the biggest tower that you can, you're probably going to start with a pyramid. You're going to start laying out these blocks, and it's going to be a more stable business model to be able to scale with, and you're going to have a very strong base. Same thing, you build a skyscraper, you actually have to go down into the earth before you can go up and build high. So you have to be comfortable with just suffering for a long time. And I just didn't want to, there was no product that I was really excited about that I had seen in the marketplace that I was like, I want to back this product and suffer with that product for years and bring it to market. So the best thing that I can do is go out and acquire. And so we're looking for companies that have already had at least $2 million in profit. We're choosing $2 million in profit. So there's enough to be able to pull some money out of the business for hiring a good executive team, because even at 2 million in revenue, you may be somewhere around 10-ish million in revenue and then 2 million in profit. You may not have the most wild executive team. And so how do we scale? You bring in people. Business is just a collection of people that solve problems. And so that collection of people may need to be upgraded. So you have your problems here, you have your people, and you have your problems, and those things may not be all aligned. So you want to find the right people that can solve the problems that will get you paid the most amount of money. And sometimes it's not always directly revenue producing things. So that's why I chose the $2 million. Now I would consider this to be maybe early stage, later stage. The beauty about this stage of business is you can do some really crazy things. So if I were to take my money and put it in the S&P 500, I could maybe get a 10% return, and that's not really growing my money per se. That's just keeping up with inflation, just with the way that the US dollar is right now. And so 2 million, the stage, allows us to already have some amount of product market fit and some amount of systems and processes in that we could just go in there and scale it. That's really what we're looking for. And so that's why I decided I did not want to go into startup. Now that's what VCs do, venture capitalists. They'll go in, bet on 10 companies, and most 9 of them will probably fail, but 1 of them will make up for that. And those are not the odds that I like to play. I don't want to spend my time with 1 company in the VC stage and then have a 90% chance that it's going to fail and have all of that effort be wiped out. For me, from a portfolio allocation, that just does not make sense for my time right now. So that's why we're selecting later stage companies that are very close to being able to scale. This is considered growth equity. Now, there are different types of leverage that you can have as an individual, as a person, as a human, as an allocator of capital. And so the different types of, you have on the bottom, which is the lowest form, and on the top, which is the highest form. You have labor, which is humans doing work. And you have capital, which is just above that. So that's money going out to do work for you to go get oftentimes more labor. And then just above that, you have code and then content/media. So that would be like this. This is an example of media, or SOPs. Those are an example of media. Those are the highest leverage things that you can actually put into your business. But there is a problem. When you get into scaling very large organizations, just scaling labor becomes extraordinarily difficult. And so I didn't want to have a company that was just labor oriented. I wanted to have somewhere that I could deploy code and content media into that business and get greater returns. I'll explain what greater returns is later. Generally though, if you write new code or new content, you don't need permission to do that, which makes it the easiest and fastest to deploy. But permission is suggested when getting capital or labor. You can get capital without permission. However, that is ill-advised because you will likely not have access to that capital for too much longer. The same thing with labor. Generally, it is considered immoral and unethical to get labor without permission from humans. That's called slavery. So that's the difference between the highest and lowest forms of leverage. And the way that you allocate funds and go buy a business is you are leveraging almost all of these things. You are leveraging capital, other people's money, because you will have more leverage. Instead of working with $1 million, I'm now working with $50 million in theory. Instead of working with only 5 employees, I'm now working with 500 employees. Instead of working with just one app, I can work with an entire software stack. Instead of just one person's SOPs, we're bringing in the knowledge from multiple different partners who have scaled businesses in this section before, people who have stayed in this stage, this VC, this early stage, late stage. And I know it says VCs here. VCs is more so for like that early stage. VCs just means that venture capital is just early enough that it's probably going to be risky. You can still technically have late stage VC that already has product market fit, but that's just not, that's just not in the VC world. That's not what I want to do. So that's different types of leverage. Now, let's talk about the fund structure that you're going to put together in order to go out and acquire this business. We're specifically looking at companies that with an enterprise value of anywhere from like 10 million to 100 million, somewhere in that area. And that company probably is more mature and has a lot of opportunity for growth. So there's me, the person who's going to go out and acquire it with a plan to be able to scale it. And we have a fund structure that we set up. There's different types of fund structures you can set up. We're not going to get into the legal of how to set up a fund. This is not that video. But the purpose of that fund is to say people have committed to go purchase or put money into this thing, and we're going to go find an acquisition target. And so let's say that we find something that is right where we're wanting it at, 50 million. We're going to go buy that thing, buy that business with the fund. So we're applying the leverage, the higher leverage that we are, and we're going to have greater returns. So let's say that we grow this thing year one, 10% would be horrible. If I have a $5 million business, I have just only added 10% on that, which is 500K. Not bad. I'm looking for more. But 10% of 50 million equals 5 million. And so the advantage of this is I'm able to catch more upside because even though it's a smaller piece of the pie, so to speak, you're catching more advantage because you have more scale and also technically less risk because a smaller business is generally a more risky business. You have a higher risk of going out of business. So that's the difference between the different sizes and why we're going for a bigger business, not a smaller business. The other unique thing that you have here is that at 50 million, you can double in a year. I've seen people who've done this before. I know them. They've taught me how to do this. This is very possible. When you get into the billion size, doubling in a year becomes a little bit harder. And we're not just talking about enterprise value. Anyone can publicly list a company and anyone can pump and dump a stock. We've seen companies like NVIDIA that have blown up in terms of how much they're worth, but nothing really changes about the underlying business itself. So why am I choosing this? Generally, it's lower risk to acquire rather than bootstrap, and there's no one business that I'm super stoked about, and that's why I'm choosing this. The next part is the enterprise value is just so much greater than if I were to just go sell a course. I could say, yep, here's a business, here's how it's sold. This is this is how to repeat this process, be able to scale and sell. But there is not much enterprise value built in just selling a course. And so I think that there's an advantage to owning some of the upside instead of just liquidating and saying, I'm going to go sell a course, which is good for cash flow. By the way, I don't want to knock this. You're still doing something better, faster, cheaper, which is great. That's how Amazon, that's how very large companies are built, by doing something better, faster, cheaper. And so courses can be a good option, but they don't really hold long-term enterprise value. And at the end of the day, the same effort that you put into building a course, you could also put into building a franchise, for example. And what does an enterprise, what does a franchise have that a course does not? Generally more enterprise value. You can go to more locations and control more of the customer process. Whereas inside of a course, you don't really control much. You just have information, which is just code. And so also faster growth means bigger returns. So this investor can park their money. Let's say that they put in $50 million. They can put their money in the S&P 500. And if they only get 10%, that's only $5 million a year. But if we manage to find a way to double this company in, let's just say 24 months, that is potentially a much larger growth on their capital and their investment than if they were to just stick it in some sort of mutual fund or index fund, which is good for de-risking. That's just generally what investors do. So that is why we're choosing it. That's where we're going and why we choose this one. We're finding a business that is reoccurring, depending on what you want to go. I have tons of experience in B2B, which is why we're going for B2B. That's what we're doing. And on this, I'm also going to show you the entire process. I'm going to make videos around that, showing the entire process of acquiring to end of cycle. I'll go through this. Let me know what questions you have in the comments. I'm going to show my entire process of how we're finding it, where we got the money from, how we created those relationships, and then what we're doing to go find an acquisition target. And if you like this video, you'll also like this video too.